Hi guys, it's Ben here from 2X Space Station. How's everyone doing? I hope that you're all well. I'm back from my amazing adventures in Scotland. I had a really great time. Even got a little bit of sunshine, which is a bit unusual for the Scottish Highlands. I've ran out of video game mugs now, but I did find this really cute mug in Inverness, coffee mug. It's lovely pottery, but it's also a cute little bird. So yeah, I've swapped the tea for coffee today because I had an inappropriate afternoon nap and now I'm feeling all frazzled. I'm sure I'm not the only person who does those ill-advised naps in the middle of the day sometimes. Today's discussion point is going to be women in video games, and this comes with a couple of disclaimers. You know we're off to a good start when I have to put disclaimers in before I even get to the topic. The first one is that I'm well aware I'm a bloke, and if you really want to know how we're doing in terms of women in video games and want to sort of enter in this discussion properly, you shouldn't really be listening to me all that much. You should be listening to what women themselves have to say. I think all too often the gaming community can be very male orientated, and you know it's all well and good a load of men spouting off about this, but how about actually listening to what women have to say about it? That might be a useful thing to do. And the second is that this discussion comes out of another YouTuber whose opinions kind of clashed with my own, and we got into a bit of a heated debate on one of his videos. But what I want to say is that this is not about attacking anybody else. This is not about slagging people off. This is not personal. This is just my thoughts about this, following on from watching videos from this YouTuber. And I'm not going to mention any names, as I said. I don't know if he's going to watch this or not. This is not about personal attack. This is about me getting my points across because I want to sort of put my 2 cents in on this one. So what this guy was saying is basically he has an issue with women in video games, and he refuses to play any games where you have to play as a woman. He uses this term forced female protagonist, meaning that you can't choose to not be a woman and be a man. And this struck me as being quite a strong and controversial opinion, and I wanted to kind of get to the underlying reason for that, but obviously we weren't able to do that because it all just became too heated and too angry. And so I kind of want to say my thoughts about this. I think that there are kind of two things going on here, and the first is I think that games companies are recognizing actually that people want to see more equality and more representation in video games. And there is this side of things, I can understand that people get pissed off, where they feel as though female characters are sort of shoehorned in. So, for example, the thing that he was talking about was, say, a World War II game where you have female soldiers in a context where there wouldn't have been any. Now, I can see why people would take umbrage with that, because they feel as though this is kind of like a token effort to include women in video games. And I can sort of understand the frustrations that kind of surround that. I don't particularly have a problem with it that much myself, but fair enough. But my main issue with that actually is that we don't need shoehorning of female characters. That wouldn't be necessary if we actually just had properly written, normally represented women in video games. You wouldn't need to kind of feel as though you have to meet your equality quotient and push women in as an afterthought in a multiplayer campaign or whatever. That wouldn't be an issue if we'd actually were starting from an equal platform where women were written in properly. So that my issue with it is probably from an artistic one. It's like, you don't need to do that. You just need to write video games that include women, rather than a reactionary kind of shoehorning thing in there. But the other thing with this is I think that people seem to think this is a political issue. I felt like I was attacked for being a liberal or whatever, for wanting to see more women in video games. But I kind of want to counter that. This is not a political thing. This is not about some kind of newfangled progressive movement in which we want to ruin your video games by putting women and black people and everything else into your games. It's just not, okay? And that's kind of one of the things that I want to say here. This is actually, to me, it's not about politics. It's about the art. You know, I think if we look at other types of media, it would be really weird if you just had this kind of whitewash where every story that you had to tell was about men. Men are not the only interesting stories to hear about. Half of the people on this planet are women, and you can't have this kind of censorship of stories. Ever since I was young, I've been into authors that haven't had this hang-up with everything being man-orientated. One of my favourite early books from Terry Pratchett was this book called Equal Rights. And this is a fantastic book because, well, for a couple of reasons, but firstly because it's actually it holds a mirror up to some of the modern issues in a really kind of social commentary, critical but funny way. In this book, basically, there's a young girl who wants to be a wizard rather than a witch. And this causes all manner of controversy because there are no female wizards and this has never happened before. And it follows this kind of, this origin story perhaps of the young girl in here with Granny Weatherwax and their fight to get her into the unseen university. But aside from the fact that this is a specific story about the role of a woman and fighting against the kind of hierarchy and the kind of all-boys club of an institution, the other side is that actually the witches' stories in Terry Pratchett have always treated women as interesting characters. They never felt pushed in there and shoehorned in the way that people may feel some women have been in recent games. They just felt like lovable, likeable characters. And we can't just not have female characters because you've got some kind of issue with playing as a woman in a video game. You don't read a book and say, this was great, but I didn't like the forced female protagonist. Couldn't I have had the option to choose a similar version that had only men in it? Because the issue there is with you. It's weird that we would expect video games not to have more women in them because stories look like how the world looks like in some ways. That's part of creative force, that's part of creative energy. The stories arise from people's passion and inspiration. And a lot of our inspiration comes from women. My mum and my grandma have been a big part of my life and have really interesting, exciting stories to tell that are specific to the role as a woman, that have got nothing to do with sort of a political agenda, but their cultural role as women is part of their interesting story. And it's weird if you expect video games not to be able to reflect that kind of story. I want to say this is not a new thing either, okay? If you feel like this is a political movement, if you feel like this is some kind of new campaign against you that's annoying you, this ain't a new thing. This has been around for ages, and I've just picked up a few games here as an example. Alicia Dragoon is a fantastic Mega Drive game. Female lead character, so what? It's a brilliant game. And I played this as a kid and didn't bat an eye. I didn't think, why can't I play as a man? I just saw it as being a good game. And you need to be able to get past those hang-ups if you have them, because you're going to miss out on great titles. But this is not new, okay? Women have been around in video games for a long time. This is a really good example. I mean, I've chosen one of the more recent ones, but you could pick any Tomb Raider game. Tomb Raider games were fantastic. And such good video games. Games that I've loved for a long time, and many of us have as well. Yes, there's a female protagonist. Didn't bat an eyelid, it didn't bother me, because the games are well written. And the interesting thing is that actually Lara Croft is a real person. She may not have started out so much of a real person, but they got Rhianna Pratchett, see the Terry Pratchett theme coming back in here, to write the origin story and give Lara Croft a proper backstory, a proper life, a proper character, and we learn about that in this game, and she becomes so much more than just a woman in a video game. She becomes a person, and that's, to me, a great example of how things should be. It shouldn't just be, oh, this would be interesting, let's have a woman because it's novel and it's crazy. They have to be real people, and Lara Croft is certainly the best example, I think, of that in recent times, of great story-based character building. And she is a talisman of action-adventure video games. She's incredible. And if you have some kind of issue and you're just going to boycott games where you have to play as a woman, you're going to miss out on some fantastic stuff. And I keep banging on about this game, and so many people bang on about it. Horizon Zero Dawn is one of the greatest PlayStation 4 games. It's absolutely mind-blowing, and it's an origin story about a young woman and her relationship with her father and growing up and the powers and the promise that she possesses. And it's beautiful. And you can't have issue with stories based around women. You're just going to miss out on all of these incredible, quality, fantastic video games. And I feel really bad for you if that's something that you just can't bring yourself to do for whatever reason. One of the reasons for the rationale behind not wanting to play as women that this guy gave me was that he likes to role play in his games and really get into the role of the character he's playing, and he's certainly not a woman, so therefore why would he want to do it? And I found this to be a particularly odd point of view because, as I said to him, I've played video games as a hedgehog, and I've managed to not spend my day going around with blue face paint on and spinballing into things. I've played my video games as astronauts and space pilots and soldiers, and I don't do those things in real life. I'm able to see there's a disconnect between what you do on a video game and who you actually are in real life. You are able to learn of other people's experiences without that having some kind of negative effect on you. And I find that to be a really poor excuse that you're not able to imagine what it might be like to be a woman as a man. Really? That to me sounds like you don't hang around with any women at all. And I think that what it comes down to often when people have hang-ups with playing as women is it's not all that much about politics. It's not all that much about the art. In my experience, in my feeling about this, it's actually about bigotry. And I think that if you've got hang-ups, the issue may well be with you, actually, rather than with anything else. And that's something for you to reflect on if for some reason this video has hit a nerve. That's all I'll say on this topic. It seems to be a bit controversial, though it really shouldn't be. And I want to know your opinions on this one. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you think in the comments below. Please keep it respectful. This is just meant as a discussion point and nothing else. Take care, guys, and I'll speak to you all soon. I'm off to finish my coffee in my lovely bird mug. See you.